The Kilmar Abrego Garcia incident has created quite the embarrassing situation this week for politicians. And by politicians, I am not talking about the Trump administration, and I am in fact referring to the Democrat Party. This is a colossal mess that feels like a gigantic parody playing out in real time. Who really is Kilmar Abrego Garcia? This video is going to answer that, and it's going to put to rest all of the narratives and rhetoric that you've been hearing across the media and across both sides of the aisle. And I'm going to put it all to rest right now on American Advocate. The media has been absolutely up in arms this past week about this loving Maryland father, Kilmar, reportedly being wrongfully deported out of America straight to El Salvador and right to CCOT prison. And now we have our very own American politicians like Democrat Senator from Maryland, Chris Van Hollen, begging and pleading the El Salvador government for Kilmar's release. But when it comes to Kilmar, there are two major problems, and as usual, the mainstream media doesn't want you to know what those issues are. Thank God, however, for independent media. So let's go over those issues. First and foremost, this loving Maryland father image that the mainstream media and Democrat politicians want you to view Garcia through is a blatant lie. And here is concrete proof of that. This is an official government document dating back to 2019 showing that Kilmar was identified with a friend at the time as an MS-13 gang member by the police. At this time, they were detained and questioned by police for an ongoing murder investigation. During this investigation, the record states that Kilmar freely admitted to being in America illegally. And this document is an official Department of Homeland Security document showcasing his record. It's officially stamped and signed, and it clearly states he is an illegal alien in America. But wait, there's more. A lot more. It just so happens there are public documents from 2021 as well. Yeah, that's right. Fast forward 2 years from the time of his arrest in 2019, where he freely admitted to being in America illegally. And where is he? Still in America. But things have changed in those past 2 years. Now, in 2021, he's beating his wife. Public records show that he was arrested for domestic violence. And more public records have been released with a full sworn statement from his wife stating that she felt afraid to even be near her husband. She wound up taking out a restraining order on him, and she personally signed her sworn statement on him. Now, these public records defy the mainstream media narrative. So they of course claim that the Trump administration is lying about his criminal record. But of course, the very public criminal records and court government documents that are signed and stamped by government officials and judges state otherwise. Despite all the overwhelming evidence, the typical postmodern Democrat Party has once again decided to die on this hill. Democrat Senator from Maryland, Chris Van Hollen, has decided that what has happened to this MS-13 gang member, wife beater, and possible human trafficker is an absolute travesty of justice. So this senator has taken it upon himself to fly down to El Salvador on taxpayer dollars and beg and plead the El Salvador government for Garcia's release and return to America.
So I just met with the vice president of El Salvador. I'm grateful for the meeting. The president is out of the country at this time. So I appreciated the chance to talk to the vice president.
And after arriving in El Salvador, Democrat Senator Chris Van Hollen did what all Democrats do best. He told people of other cultures and ethnicities in their own home country what they should believe about their own citizen and their own gang culture.
If you listen to President Trump and the Trump administration, you would think that the U.S. courts have found that Mr. Abrego Garcia is part of MS-13, but in fact, they have not found that. In fact, recently, a U.S. federal court judge said that the Trump administration did not have evidence to support the claim.
But rest easy. Surely this senator from Maryland knows more about MS-13 gang culture than the El Salvador residents do. But it really does just continue to get more embarrassing from here. You see, while Carolyn Levitt was holding a White House press conference where she presented the blatant, concrete evidence of Kilmar Abrego Garcia's criminal record and immigration status to journalists who no doubt mostly weren't going to report on any of that anyway.
And just this morning, it was revealed through Maryland court documents that Abrego Garcia's wife petitioned for an order of protection against him for 2 instances of domestic violence in May of 2021. And here is the order right here. The court ordered that the respondent committed the following acts of abuse. Once in May of 2021, assault in any degree. And on May 4th of 2021, he punched and scratched his wife, ripped off her shirt, and grabbed and bruised her. This is from a court in Maryland. So not only are Democrats rushing to defend an illegal criminal foreign terrorist gang member, but also an apparent woman beater.
And then also turned over the stage to the angel mom of Rachel Morin, who then delivered an emotional and passionate speech about the dangers of allowing illegal immigrants who have gang affiliations to stay in America. Senator Chris Van Hollen, at the same time of this, was negotiating with a foreign government to have a gang member criminal released from their prisons and sent back to America. The optics couldn't get much worse.
I want to preserve life, and that's the only reason why I have taken and spoken about Rachel all this time. If you're a mother here in the room, can you imagine standing there alive? You're alive, and someone comes and puts their hands into your chest and rips out your heart.
While Rachel's mom is on stage crying her eyes out in front of press and cameras about her innocent daughter's death.
These are the kind of criminals that we need to remove from our country. We are American citizens. Why should we allow people like this, violent criminals that have no conscience at all, to murder our mothers, our sisters, our daughters?
Senator Chris Van Hollen is outside in sunny El Salvador, sitting in an outside restaurant attached to his very lavish hotel, meeting with Abrego Garcia. And together they were sipping martinis. This contrasting photo of Trump meeting with Rachel's mom while Senator Chris meets with a gang member speaks volumes, I think. I also just want to point something out that I think matters here. Senator Chris Van Hollen was one of the many Democrat senators that voted against the Laken-Riley Act, an act that thankfully passed regardless and requires the mandatory detention of non-U.S. nationals who have been charged with certain crimes, including theft, burglary, and violent offenses. Yeah, he voted against that, and now he's down there negotiating for a gangster's release. It just fits the Democrat narrative, doesn't it? But I kid you not, the optics for the Democrat Party still kept getting worse this week. I can't believe it either, but they are so good at digging the ditch for themselves these days, and it literally just kept getting worse. Because when Chris Van Hollen flew back to America, he lands and immediately holds a press conference where he continues to advocate for Abrego Garcia's release, despite the overwhelming evidence the day prior already being presented to the press that proves his illegal immigration status, his MS-13 gang ties, his domestic violence record, and his possible human trafficking crimes.
It's good to be home. Now we need to end the illegal abduction of Kilmar Abrego Garcia and bring him home too.
The White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller summarized this entire ordeal perfectly, in my opinion.
I'm almost at a loss for words for how outrageous it is. Here's an individual, the man who has been deported to his home country of El Salvador, who has been repeatedly documented by multiple federal and state authorities to be a member of MS-13, one of the most violent and ruthless criminal organizations on planet Earth, which is now a designated foreign terrorist organization, and an individual who has been incredibly implicated in human smuggling and human trafficking, an individual who is a documented woman beater, somebody who has viciously assaulted a woman in ways that shock the human conscience. That is who the Democrat Party is going to provide aid, solace, and comfort to, not to Senator Van Hollen's own constituents, like the Morin family.
And now, as of this morning, I'm seeing on X the latest trend with all of this is that the liberals are just straight up denying the evidence of Garcia's gang affiliations. They claim that the problem with all of this is that there is no concrete evidence of his MS-13 gang ties. And they blatantly make fun of the fact that some of that evidence might even include his tattoos. The liberals are also outraged at this photo of President Donald Trump sitting at the Resolute desk holding up a photo of Garcia's hand tattoos, claiming that it's photoshopped, all because the letters and numbers MS-13 are written over the tattoos in the photo. And yes, those letters and numbers were added onto that photo after the fact. They're not trying to even pretend like it wasn't. That's how evidence is filed in these cases. You see, each letter and number is written over each symbol tattooed on each one of his fingers to demonstrate what they mean. And if you don't believe me, MS-13 symbolism is well documented. Not to mention, we've known they deliberately hide their gang tattoos with other tattoos for decades now. Kilmar's wife also knows better than to allow her husband's hand tattoos to show up in a photo. That's why in this photo, she's covering his hand tattoos with 2 heart emojis. If his hand tattoos weren't symbolic of any gang affiliations, why would she bother hiding them to begin with? Now finally, I want to discuss all of the bad news that is coming Senator Chris Van Hollen's way. Firstly, that little plane ride and vacation trip he took down to El Salvador, turns out it will not be getting covered by taxpayer dollars. Congressman James Comer has denied Senator Chris Van Hollen's request for his trip to be covered by government funds in a letter from Comer to Hollen that reads, I write in response to your letter of April 15, 2025, requesting that I approve from the committee's budget official travel for you both to visit the country of El Salvador to meet with a foreign MS-13 gang member whose wife accused him of crimes and who is strongly suspected of human trafficking. It is absurd that you both displayed active hostility for over 2 years towards the committee's oversight of the Biden border crisis and the consequences of millions of illegal aliens entering the country. Yet now, you are seeking travel at committee expense to meet with foreign gang members. You may be pleased to know that a Democrat Senator, Chris Van Hollen, was photographed just yesterday in El Salvador enjoying margaritas garnished with cherry slices with the foreign gang member your letter references. If you also wish to meet with him, you can spend your own money, but I will not approve a single dime of taxpayer funds for use on the excursion you have requested. Your request is denied. Sincerely, James Comer. And all I gotta say to that is God bless Congressman James Comer. But hold on, it gets way worse than funds being denied for Senator Chris Van Hollen. You see, this major publicity stunt that this ridiculous senator has pulled off over the past few days did not come without risk, and he even acknowledges that to his own speech to the American press. And why is that? Because in doing all this, he very possibly could have violated the Logan Act. The Logan Act is an act that criminalizes the negotiation of a dispute between the United States and a foreign government by an unauthorized American citizen. And the intent behind the act is to prevent unauthorized negotiations from undermining the government's position. And yes, like it or not, when it comes to foreign affairs especially, President Donald Trump oversees all of that, and he represents the government's position. You see, watching Democrat senators like Chris Van Hollen fly down to El Salvador and negotiate on a gang member's behalf in a foreign government doesn't sit well with Republicans for a reason. We inherently know that this is wrong, and the Logan Act was created and confirms this position. It's despicable, really, because this is pretty much what Senator Chris Van Hollen did in El Salvador, and he almost accidentally admits it in this speech to the press.
My staff who agreed that we all must be prepared to take risks because of the current risk to our Constitution itself. In addition to having a variety of discussions on bilateral issues between the United States and El Salvador, I had 2 main goals. One was to urge the government of El Salvador not to be complicit in the illegal abduction and detention of Mr. Abrego Garcia and to release him. I made that request directly to the Vice President of El Salvador. The president was out of country at the time, and I've previously reported on that conversation. My principal mission was to meet with Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
Now the question is, will the Trump administration pursue these charges on Senator Chris Van Hollen? Truthfully, I don't think so. The Republicans are notoriously weak when it comes to pursuing justice in cases like this. I also do not have much faith, if I'm being honest, in Attorney General Pam Bondi. I think she's going to wind up turning out to be a dud. And when it comes to the Trump administration and President Trump specifically, I think he's going to wind up becoming one of the greatest presidents of all time when it comes to restoring the American economy. But not so much when it comes to seeking justice in the form of going after Democrat political rivals. I'm just being honest. Regardless of my opinion of all of that, the opportunity for Republicans to pursue these charges against Senator Chris Van Hollen are there. if the Republicans decide to develop a strong enough spine to go after them. But what are your thoughts on this? Do you think they should do this, or do you think they should just let the embarrassing moment speak for itself? Comment down below. And I just want to wrap all of this up now by showing you a clip of CNN's Harry Enten revealing the poll results on immigration and what the general opinion is of the American people when it comes to that. And I just want those poll results to speak in volumes when it comes to contrasting the very real problem that the Democrat Party has when it comes to their overall lack of self-awareness. So take a look, and thanks for watching.
What about on the specific issue of deportations? I mean, compare it maybe today Trump to first-term Trump.
Yeah, this I think is the big change. You know, we were talking about changes in policy and how Americans want policy to be carried out. Deport all undocumented immigrants. Voters favoring the government trying to deport all 11 million of them. Back in 2016, just 38% of voters wanted the government to try to deport all 11 million undocumented immigrants. Compared to where we are in 2025, 56%, the majority. The American people have come a long way on this issue, much closer to Donald Trump.